What's up everybody, Matt Moran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of news to go over here this week as usual, and the first thing is a stunner. So Genesis has revealed the beautiful Genesis X concept. So aside from the design here, which is gorgeous, again, I have to say this thing is just, wow, that's like one of the best looking concepts in a while. But anyway, the only detail they really gave about it is that it's electric. Otherwise, it continues with that two-line design theme from other new Genesis models, but looks even more dramatic, of course, especially with this coupe adaptation. The inside is simple, but very concept-y with a refreshing lack of screens for once, which is kind of nice. And Genesis, they haven't said if they're actually going to build it or not. It's basically just showing, hey, this is what our gorgeous design would look like on a coupe. And yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that they could actually build this, because if it is using like the eGMP platform from other Hyundais and Kias that are getting that new electric platform, you know, it's not quite as much development work as it would be to do some type of, you know, bespoke platform for a coupe like this. If they can just kind of hack up that current platform and make it work for something like this, would be very nice to see as a nice halo model in the Genesis showroom and stuff, even if they don't sell a ton of them. I think this would be super cool. And there has been rumors and talks over the past couple of years about Genesis doing some type of coupe or sports car or supercar or something like that. There's even been talks of like a mid-engine type of thing or something. So maybe, you know, there is some future for something like this. I sure hope so, because that would be fantastic to see out on the streets. But anyway, awesome to at least see that Genesis made that concept. Speaking of that eGMP platform, though, Kia fully revealed the EV6 this week and all of its specs, and so that includes there's this new, out of left field, there's a surprise GT version as well, which is much faster than any other eGMP vehicle we've seen so far. So we already saw the design a couple of weeks ago, and while it's good looking, it's not quite as distinctive or as cool as the Ioniq 5 with its super retro styling that one has, but it does share a platform with that vehicle. But as you'll see, there's lots of pretty large differences between the two. So unlike that Ioniq 5, this performance variant that you're going to get in the EV6 is going to do a lot more power than any version of the Ioniq 5. So the EV6 has a bunch of other differences as well, going back to even the wheelbase is 4 inches shorter than it is in the Ioniq 5, but overall its length is actually 2 inches longer for the whole body over the Ioniq. So it's actually, in appearance, is going to be a tiny bit longer, even if the wheelbase is a little shorter. It's also about 2 inches lower than the Ioniq as well, which is interesting since they're all kind of like lifted hatchbacks in their designs and stuff, but this one's a little bit lower. As for the batteries and the motors, they're also a little bit different from the Ioniq, surprisingly. With other electric vehicles, it's like they just copy and paste the same stuff and the same specs for everything. This is unique. So first, the base configuration is going to be a lot slower than the base Ioniq, because the standard rear motor, rear-wheel drive version of the EV6 here is only going to do 168 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque when paired with its smallest 58 kilowatt-hour battery. If you upgrade to the bigger 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery, that bumps the rear motor to 232 horsepower while retaining the same 258 pound-feet of torque. But that version is the one that's going to have the best possible range, and they're quoting 316 miles on the European test, which is very generous. So EPA ratings are going to be mid to high 200s, so basically the same as you get with any current, you know, Nero EV or Kona EV. So basically, you know, expect the same kind of range as those. So not really moving the ball forward too far on that, you know, as far as range stuff goes. It'd be nice if they had bigger batteries, but it's a good start nonetheless. And, you know, should mean that EPA range, you know, maybe in the future they'll have something a little bit better. We'll have to see, but that's the starting point for that range, and it's going to go down lower for these performance versions. So there's no range estimates given for the other versions, but just keep in mind it will be lower than, you know, that mid to high 200s of this one. So stepping up to the dual motor all-wheel drive version with the smaller battery gives you 232 horsepower, but then 446 pound-feet of torque. And then if you go for the big battery and the dual motors, that goes to 321 horsepower, and then that same 446 pound-feet of torque in that version. So that's the strongest non-GT EV6 you'll be able to get. The top dog, though, is that EV6 GT, and that comes with the bigger battery along with stronger motors for 577 horsepower and 546 pound-feet of torque. Massive massive amount of power, the most powerful Kia they've ever done. It's also the fastest Kia they've ever made. 0 to 60 is only going to be 3.5 seconds for this thing. It's going to really be a sleeper because this thing does not look like it's that fast, but it is. And in addition to the all-wheel drive, that GT version will also get electronic limited slip differential, and I'm sure it'll have a sportier suspension setup and stuff as well, although they haven't detailed any of that kind of stuff yet. All versions will also be supporting 800 volt charging speeds, enabling a 10 to 80% charge in only 18 minutes in the ideal conditions, of course. The interior looks pretty nice as well without going overboard with the whole futuristic thing, but it still has curved 12-inch screens for both the gauges and the infotainment display, along with a small touch panel for the climate controls underneath it. You can also get an augmented reality head-up display and the Highway Drive Assist 2.0 feature, which has previously only been available in the Genesis model. So you'll be able to get that here in this, and that gives you automated lane changes and more advanced driver assistance stuff with that. So there's no pricing yet for these, but they'll be available to reserve online right now. They actually went live, I think, a day or two ago. And then the vehicles are going to be arriving in the second half of this year. So actually a pretty quick rollout for these. So hopefully we'll have more details about that GT version, relatively soon. And I'll be very curious to see how they price that with that kind of performance. I'm guessing that one's got to be at least like 60 grand to compete with the Model 3 performance, but we'll have to see. But interesting to hear that. Hyundai has also teased the production version of the Santa Cruz pickup that will be fully revealed here in 2 weeks. And so it's going to be a unibody pickup, but Hyundai is instead calling it a sport adventure vehicle. And so you can see the front here looks like a more aggressive version of the new Tucson, but then out back you have, of course, the very bold looks, kind of similar to like a Ridgeline as far as the shape of the bed and stuff like that. But, very large LED taillights, the huge Santa Cruz logo stamped on the tailgate, a little bit more masculine than the Ridgeline there in the back. It also appears to have built-in steps in the rear bumper. I'm glad they're copying GM with that, because I think that's one of the best designs for trucks. It makes it much easier and simpler to get up into that bed instead of having to pull out some type of step or just hurdle over, yourself. I think that's really great, and I love that they have that. And they also say that the Santa Cruz will have a flexible bed for gear, cutting-edge connectivity, and a highly maneuverable all-wheel drive platform for adventure-focused environments. So, hopefully the all-wheel drive system will be a little bit more advanced than what you get in a basic, Tucson or something like that. They also say it's going to offer powerful and efficient engines, meaning that there will be more than one engine. We'll see how much, variances there are, but my guess is it's going to be the same powertrains as the Tucson, meaning you'll have a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder with, about 200 horsepower or so, and then you'll have, a hybrid version potentially, and then a plug-in hybrid even possibly would be nice. That would be the mix that I'm imagining. Maybe they'll, do something different, but that would be the safe bet, I think. And so, yeah, and there aren't any charging ports on, this teaser image or anything like that. So, maybe the plug-in hybrid version will come down the road or something. But interesting to hear that. And yeah, they say it's going to start production this summer. So another vehicle that, doesn't have a long lead here. We're going to be seeing it here in 2 weeks, and then it'll be in dealerships just a couple months later. So great to see that. Nissan this week has also revealed the Patrol Nismo for the Middle East. It's not here in the States. This is basically the same thing we get as our Armada here, the Nissan Armada, but Nissan confirmed to Autoblog that we will not be getting this Nismo version of the Armada here. But for those in the Middle East, this Nismo version does give you an extra 28 horsepower from that 5.6 liter V8 for 428 horsepower total. And then they also added in a Bilstein suspension for sportier handling and 22-inch wheels that are 10 pounds lighter than the regular Armada wheels there. Visually, it gets a sportier bumpers, side skirts, spoiler, along with some carbon fiber trim and red accents on the inside. Although strangely, it's still running the old infotainment setup instead of the new screen you get in the Armadas here in the States. But anyway, it'll be arriving in Middle Eastern dealers here this month, actually, so it'll be available to buy basically now. Subaru has revealed the 2022 Outback Wilderness this week. And so this Wilderness will be this new sub-brand for Subaru. So expect to see it across, basically everything else in the lineup. I think the leaked timeline showed the Forester's getting it this year. The Crosstrek will be getting it for the next generation of the Crosstrek. I don't think it's coming before then. Yeah, we'll see what they do if they put it on the Ascent or something as well. But regardless, it's a new sub-brand here. And so you should expect these same kind of changes for that Forester that's coming here, pretty soon, I'm sure. store. But it gets 0.8 inches of extra ground clearance for 9.5 inches total, along with an upgraded suspension with more travel and a new tune for the suspension for better stability on rough terrain as well. It gets some redesigned bumpers that improve the approach and departure angles for better off-roading as well, although it still isn't as good as like the new Ford Bronco Sport or even the Jeep Cherokee or Grand Cherokee. So, you know, there's still some limits here. It's still a Subaru Outback, but you know, will be a little bit better with the off-roading stuff. It also has an improved version of the X mode for the all-wheel drive system so that it can do that X mode stability stuff at higher speeds than before. It's also paired up with unique 17-inch wheels on Yokohama Geolandar tires, the all-terrain kind of tires. And so those tires even have raised white lettering, which pays an homage to the original Outback, which I think is a really cool little like 80s, 90s type of touch. I kind of hope that catches on with other SUVs. That'd be kind of fun. Other things here, the rear diff also now gets a 4.44 to 1 final drive ratio instead of I think the 410 gears they had previously. And the CVT has also been retuned for an equal final drive there for the front as well. And so that is designed to provide improved low-end torque is kind of what they're going for with this. So it should help when you're climbing really steep grades up to I think about 40% or so grades. You can actually get up a little bit better here with this. And speaking of torque though, the Wilderness versions come standard with a 2.4 liter turbo engine from the XT models. This kind of builds onto the Onyx model and, you know, kind of starts with that kind of feature content and stuff, but it doesn't get any additional power or anything here for the Wilderness version. But other unique exterior bits are the unique grille, there's larger wheel arch cladding, a front skid plate, LED fog lights with this like hex kind of pattern. There's new tow hook covers there and roof rails with anodized copper finishes. There's a matte black hood decal, and there's Wilderness badges, of course, all over. The roof rack is also stronger now as well, allowing a load of up to 700 pounds, and you can mount things like tents on them now if you'd like, so you can do the actual overlanding stuff here in the Outback a little bit better than before. There's also this geyser blue color, which is unique to the Wilderness versions. And then inside it gets StarTex water repellent seats, copper colored and gunmetal colored accents throughout the interior, as well as a darker headliner so that if you get it dirty and stuff, it doesn't stand out as much. It also gets a full-size spare tire too, which is a new addition here. And yeah, they're going to be available later this year, but there's no pricing for those yet. Lexus has also revealed the LFZ Electrified concept this week, and so it symbolizes the next generation of Lexus, and they say it incorporates the driving performance, styling, and advanced technology that they say is set to be realized by 2025, although it doesn't sound like this exact car will actually lead to any kind of production model, which is kind of a shame because I think it's actually really cool looking and just the way it is. You know, if they had some type of sporty coupe SUV like thing, you know, I think that could do pretty well for them since, you know, a lot of other companies are doing pretty well with those. And but I think this looks a lot cooler than a lot of those coupe SUVs do, and really sleek. And even if only certain design elements spread to production cars like those full width taillights, which I believe they said will be something that will be showing up on future Lexuses, as well as the illuminated badges and stuff. But, you know, even if it's just those few things, that's still going to be a big departure from the current Lexus styling language. Although they will be carrying over some stuff like its spindle grille seems like it's going to evolve, but stick around because I guess that's something that hasn't hurt Lexus sales at all, so they're going to keep on going with that. And so yeah, I think it has some really cool, you know, design elements to it. And along with this car, Lexus shared their electrification plans here, and so it's not quite as ambitious or as much of a deadline that's set in stone like you see with some other companies, but they did say by 2025 they plan to offer electric variants of all their models, which is pretty impressive to only be doing that in about 4 years time. They're also aiming for more electric vehicle sales than gas vehicle sales by 2025, which is also very ambitious to say that Lexus will have a majority electric sales by 2025. I don't, you know, we'll have to see if they meet that goal or not. But anyway, also by 2025, they say they plan to introduce 20 new or improved models by that point, including 10 electrified models that will be a mix of battery electric, plug-in hybrids, and hydrogen vehicles, depending on, they say some of it will depend on the region, so certain regions will get some stuff and not other stuff, and vice versa. And they did say that 2 of these new vehicles will be arriving this year as well. So we'll have to see, you know, what ends up coming out this year and, you know, what they end up doing. I think the prime target right now is the Lexus NX is next up for its new version. There's talks about getting a prime, like the RAV4 Prime powertrain essentially in the next generation NX, which was leaked out a couple of months back already. So that's most likely the first thing coming here. and that again gives you that electrified thing like they're talking about, and so that'll probably be one of the first ones we'll see, and we'll see what else they do after that. But that'll be a great start because the RAV4 Prime is fantastic, and so a Lexus version of that sounds great to me. But anyway, interesting to see that LFZ as well, and yeah, looking forward to seeing what Lexus does here in the next few years. Mercedes this week had a couple of stories here, but they first continued their slow rollout of this EQS electric vehicle this week. And so this week they revealed the interior and the range for the car. So the range, they're claiming 478 miles with the top battery option, but that is on the easier European testing cycle. So even still though, EPA range should still be over 400 miles, which is really, kind of top of the pack right now. Whenever because this is actually going on sale by the end of this year. And at that point, I don't think the Lucid Air will be out. That'll do more range eventually. And as of right now, that will actually slightly beat out the Tesla Model S. So pretty impressive. But part of that is thanks to its extremely low 0.20 drag coefficient, which just barely beats out the Model S again. But this makes it the most aerodynamic car currently available. And then as for the interior, that's the big thing they really revealed. And they've basically re-revealed the Hyperscreen, which we already saw at CES in January. But now we're seeing it inside the actual interior here. Mercedes also revealed that it'll only be optional, and you can also get a less impressive setup that's identical to the new S-Class if you want something a bit simpler, although that's still very high tech. It's like a 12-inch screen already. But this bumps up this Hyperscreen here. The main middle screen there is 17.7 inches for that touchscreen, and it's wedged in between these two 12.3-inch touchscreens for the driver and the passenger. Beyond those screens, though, the interior has the same usual impressiveness of other high-end Mercedes models, but there are some unique touches. There's a big storage bin under the center console there, thanks to the electric powertrain, and it also has the most extensive use of ambient lighting that Mercedes has ever done so far in a production vehicle. So the ambient lighting now has extended onto the sides of the seats, so they're continuing to really stretch that ambient lighting as much as possible, and really distinguish their interiors with how much light you have there. And it's a pretty cool look there. The seats also will come in two different designs. There'll be a sporty AMG one and then a comfort one. Other comfort items are that there's going to be a HEPA air filtration system that not only filters out bacteria and viruses and stuff, but also unpleasant smells. So it can actually identify different chemicals. If you're going through a place that has something that smells like sulfur or something, it'll intelligently shut that down. And actually, the car can even suggest when it knows it's going into an area that doesn't have great air quality, it'll recommend you roll up the windows and stuff. So it's going to be very intelligent with all those types of things. It also has, they've had in Mercedes in the past, the high-end models have fragrance systems that it'll actually pump perfume through the air vents and stuff. So this takes it one step further, and so it now has a new fragrance that you can have, as well as I think there's a few different ones you can pick from. But some other interesting comfort features here is there's a new power nap mode that you can use when stopped, of course. I think ideally they're thinking people use this when they're charging the car, since that could take a little while still. But anyway, it reclines the seat, closes the windows and blinds, dims the screens and the ambient lighting, and then plays relaxing music. And then it can also wake you up by playing a wake-up sound, turning on the seat massage and ventilation, and then once it notices you're awake somehow, then it raises the seat and opens everything back up and turns on the car and gets it ready to go for you. So that's an interesting touch. I'm not sure how far back the seat will recline. They didn't show that. I don't know if it'll be as far back as like the new F-150 or if it's just, a little bit further than normal or what. But anyway, that's pretty crazy. Other fun touches are there's this energizing nature system, which kind of sounds like the sounds of nature that Hyundai and Kia have, except this is a little bit more advanced. So it plays three different sounds. There's either forest glade, sounds of the sea, or summer rain. And while it plays those sounds, it runs unique climate control programs to simulate the feeling of being in those environments. So for example, the sounds of the sea program will actually alternate cool and warm air from various directions to kind of make it feel like you're on the beach or something, which is pretty wild, and we'll see how that works in reality. You can also choose three different sounds while driving that fill in where the engine noises used to be, since the EQS, of course, is fully electric. And so there's a relaxing silver waves, sporty vivid flux, and then there's roaring pulse, which is self-explanatory. That's the sportiest one. And so it's, these like UFO sound type type things, make it sound a little bit more futuristic and stuff. And I think all that stuff it's fun and cool, and of course you can turn it off if you don't like it, but I'm excited to hopefully try all that stuff out someday. And it all sounds pretty promising, but hopefully we don't have too much longer to wait here for the full reveal, since it's supposed to be going on sale, like I said, by the end of this year here in the States. So coming pretty soon here, but they're still taking forever to actually show us what the exterior looks like. So hopefully we see that here, sooner rather than later. But sounds like it's going to be a very promising vehicle, at least from the inside so far. Mercedes has also revealed more details here about their AMG e-Performance hybrid setups, which have been talked about here in the past few weeks. We started talking about this whenever it was confirmed that the C63 is going to ditch the V8 for a 4-cylinder turbo along with a hybrid setup. They detailed some of that whole powertrain as well as what it's going to look like in the twin turbo V8 stuff that they're doing. And so they showed primarily what's going to look like in the V8 version. So it consists of a rear-mounted electric motor that does 201 horsepower on its own and can drive the rear wheels or the front ones, actually, thanks to an all-wheel drive system that can actually kind of work in reverse and send power from the rear to the front. So that's kind of cool. It also uses a 6.1 kilowatt hour battery that spins a new electric turbocharger, or in the case of the V8, 2 turbochargers that these cars will be using, and that eliminates the turbo lag on that engine still. So you'll have instant power from those turbo motors, and also fill in some of the power there with the electric stuff. And then its top AMG 73E version, it'll be able to do over 800 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque when it's paired up again with that twin turbo V8, which is going to be pretty crazy, in those top models that are going to be getting that. And then for the new C63, if we extrapolate out here and say, okay, well, you're running a 201 horsepower electric motor in the rear for the new C63, and they're saying it's going to use the A45S 4-cylinder turbo, which I believe does 416 horsepower in its top spec. So 416 plus 201 puts us at a total horsepower of 617 horsepower for the new top C63. If you can fully, combine those two motors at their peak power at the same time, then you could have a potentially peak horsepower of 617 horsepower for that top C63, or what I'm guessing would be the C63S. You'll probably be just slightly under 600 for a regular C63. But, very impressive jumps in power considering the top C63 with the V8 did 503 horsepower, I think. So hopefully that extra 114 horsepower will help soften the blow of not having a V8 engine under the hood there and those sounds. Instead, you'll be hearing a 4-cylinder revving like crazy and electric motors giving you the rest of the propulsion there. So very interesting. And again, we'll have to wait for all the final official details on the C63, which hasn't even been announced yet, to see what they end up actually doing. But this just goes to show just how much potential this setup has. MG this week, they've revealed a few images here of their Cyberster concept that they've been teasing, and so it blends futuristic styling here with some cool retro touches. They revealed it has these magic eye lights which can actually open up when turned on. So it sounds like they're trying to bring back flip-up headlights, at least for this concept, which with how much people are loving a lot of other stuff from the 80s and the 90s, I could see flip-up headlights potentially being something cool that they could bring back in the future. So I'd totally be down for new cars with flip-up lights. That'd be awesome. As far as mechanical details, there's really nothing yet except it's an electric vehicle, of course. But we also don't know if it's actually going to be built or not either. But it's fun to see a concept nonetheless, and will be more details revealed later this month at the Shanghai Auto Show. So we'll see more there. Land Rover this week has revealed the Range Rover SVAutobiography Ultimate, and there's actually an SVAutobiography Dynamic Ultimate as well, which might be in the running for the longest vehicle name ever. But anyway, it comes in a short and a long wheelbase version, along with this exclusive orchard green color with a black roof and copper colored accents. And the long wheelbase version is really going to be the most luxurious one because it gets all kinds of touches for the backseat occupants to really coddle them in luxury. There's power closed doors, reclining seats that do heating, cooling, and hot stone massages. They have footrests, calf rests, tray tables, a middle console that has a zenith clock and a refrigerator, and all that kind of, other stuff. You'll see the TVs and all that mounted there. So very luxurious there in the back seats of that. It of course runs the top Range Rover engine, meaning the supercharged V8, which does 557 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque in this application. Pricing is going to be starting at $189,000 for the short wheelbase version and $220 grand for the long wheelbase version, which puts it well above both the Maybach version of the GLS and even a Bentley Bentayga. I mean, you know, the Range Rover, it looks nice, but is it Bentley nice? I don't think so. Is it Maybach nice? No. And I mean, it's 100 grand cheaper than a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, so it has that going for it. But I don't know. Unless you're a Range Rover diehard, this might be a tough sell, you know, just because you can get nicer stuff for less money, I think. But anyway, interesting to see that. I guess you could argue the Land Rover is going to be the most off-road capable one, but how many people buying these things, these luxury versions, really care about off-road luxury stuff? So anyway, interesting to see nonetheless. Lastly, Volkswagen had a couple of stories this week. Very controversial Volkswagen stuff this week. For the good stuff, though, first, Volkswagen, their CEO of their commercial division actually talked with Car and Driver, who confirmed that the electric ID Buzz van that we all are loving and hoping to see here in the States as soon as possible, that will be arriving on schedule in 2023. So that's when we'll be seeing that here in the States. But they did say there won't be a commercial version of that here in the States. Like Europe and stuff's going to get like a panel version that, you know, you can use for hauling stuff. We're only getting a commercial version or a consumer version here. And we're also only going to get a long wheelbase version. There will also be a short wheelbase version that, again, you can get in Europe and stuff. But here in the States, since we have lots of wide open spaces, they're just giving us the big long wheelbase version, and that's it. As far as the powertrain and stuff, they said it's going to basically, you know, have the same setup as the ID3 and ID4. So you're going to have 200 horsepower and rear-wheel drive for the base model, and then the dual motor all-wheel drive version, you'll do 300 horsepower. So no surprises there, really. But yeah, I'm excited for these things to finally hit the streets here in 2 years. I'm also excited to hear what the actual name's going to be, because it's not going to be called the ID Buzz. But they can't just do names, I don't think, like they do with everything else. You know, the ID3 and 4. I really hope they do call it the ID Bus, or I don't know, something that's, you know, a little bit more fun than just a bunch of letters and numbers, but we'll have to see about that. But then the final story this week, the bad news from Volkswagen. So they got caught up in a little bit of controversy this week with their botched April Fool's joke. So a few days before April 1st, a leaked press release on their official press site, which was then taken down, revealed that they were changing their name in America to Voltswagen, V-O-L-T-S wagon, instead of, you know, the traditional spelling. And this was supposed to emphasize their switch to EVs. And, you know, it seemed pretty crazy, but also considering like GM changed their logo, you know, a couple months back to emphasize the plug. And, you know, there's been a bunch of other companies kind of doing something like this, even though it hasn't been quite this drastic. It seemed relatively believable. And then, you know, it was a huge deal. Of course, every news outlet was reporting on this and talking about it. And Volkswagen even came out and confirmed, yes, it is true, and said, yep, this is what we're doing. And so they deliberately were like, yes, this is true. And then a couple of days later, they confirmed it was just a marketing stunt. So they just lied to us deliberately in the spirit of April Fools. But like, I don't know, to me, I mean, yes, it got people talking, and that's what they were going for, obviously. But just straight up lying and being like, yes, this thing is true. It just, to me, feels like a crappy prank that some YouTuber would, you know, prank someone where it's not even an actual prank. It's just like trying to get attention with clickbait stuff and, you know, trying to get views. That's how this came off to me. It's just like some desperate YouTuber trying to get attention with lies. It could have, you know, been a funny joke if it was on April 1st and they're like, happy April Fools. What if we called our company Volkswagen? You know, I think that could have, you know, just been a nice, like, oh, that's funny. And, you know, of course, that wouldn't have got people talking as much, though. And so that was clearly what they were going for. Yeah, to me, it just comes off as desperate and just, I don't know, it's just not great. Especially Volkswagen, you know, they've had the whole diesel emissions cheating thing and stuff. Like, they've been known to lie in the past. So to straight up lie to get attention just doesn't sit very well with me. And I suggest that Volkswagen, if they want to get people to pay attention to their electric vehicles, make something that's, you know, exciting and makes people naturally want to talk about it. You know, don't just make a crossover that blends in with everything else out there. Like, do something crazy, do something wild, you know, make an electric Beetle again, make the bus and, you know, put the news out about that, you know, do exciting things that people are naturally excited about instead of trying to manufacture fake excitement with lies. It just, I don't know, that's my take on that whole thing. But it worked. We're talking about it. I'm talking about it here. So, you know, I guess in that respect, it was a success for them. But yeah, not a great look in my opinion. But anyway, that's it for all the news this week, guys. So let me know your thoughts and everything in the comments below. Please continue to stay safe and healthy. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.